more than.
No, يعني you watched after
What?
we finished or
Yeah,
together?
no, I watched.
What did you watch, ya Sarah? Tell me.
I watched nearly about the World War II, like in
Uh-huh.
general, and they, of course, they mentioned the Hiroshima and how it was, how it affected them like this.
Why you wanted to watch about World War II? You wanted to know the reason?
Yeah, because I was interested in World War II, like from a long time ago, about the
Mm.
world wars in general. And then we talk about the Hiroshima, and I said to myself, why not?
So
So I watched.
did you know the reason?
It was, of course, because they bombed the harb, the one you said to us,
Pearl Harbor.
and
Uh,
they were against America. The Japan, it was with the Germany, with it and with Italy, of course. And then they because they bombed them, so they bombed them again, but with
they paid
nuclear
it
bomb
back.
this
Yeah.
time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You feel it? They were equal?
Of course not, because nuclear bomb here it affected all the like people who were like innocent after the war. But when they were bombing the ones in the sea, the ships, it
Pearl
was
Harbor.
mainly like for soldiers. So it was
Military. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So it was like fair. But for the nuclear bomb that happened in Hiroshima, like some of them died, even if they were not like part of the war. So that's why I don't consider it fair, not like
Yeah.
that.
Citizens.
Yeah, exactly.
And when they asked United States, what did you do this? They said we wanted to guarantee that Japan will never stand alone
Yeah,
again.
because it was so strong at that time,
Uh, we
Japan.
don't want Japan, يعني we don't want it to have to stand on their feet again, ever. They
Yeah,
wanted to cut its root.
yeah.
Okay?
It ended. It was like somehow a part of or like a reason for it to end the war.
Yes, it was the reason. Because what happened when they dropped the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima? Why? They wanted Japan to surrender, and Japan refused to surrender. Even when they bombed the nuclear bomb in Hiroshima,
Yeah,
Japan refused to surrender though. So what did they do? They threw a second bomb on Nagasaki.
yeah.
And when they threw the second bomb on
They
Nagasaki
surrendered.
here, Japan decided to surrender because يعني, there will not be in Japan anymore.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
Why they choose Hiroshima? Because they
It
wanted to
means
choose a state which is populated and important for the country to damage it.
yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. So previous time we stopped where we were reading, right? I'll share the PowerPoint with you. Previous time we discussed the pictures of Hiroshima before and after the nuclear bomb. And we discussed the author, John Richard Hersey, Hiroshima, a Battle for Adana. And then we stopped at the reading vocabulary. Uh, did we stop, girls? We finished page 240?
Miss, we stopped at line 31.
Okay. Girls, you see my PowerPoint, right?
No.
No.
I didn't share it. I was showing it to you. I opened it, I was sharing it to you. Here is it. So from the beginning again. Here. Now can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Hiroshima before the bomb, nuclear bomb. After, wow, look at the damage. Unbelievable. And the author, John Hersey. in his books. Hiroshima, John Hersey, a Nobel for Adelaide. Okay, and we stopped here. Where did we stop? 31?
Yes, line 31.
Yes. Okay, so read ya, Noor.
Okay. Mr. Tanimoto was a small man, quick to talk, laugh, and
Before
cry.
you start, girls, we don't forget what do we do? We underline the imageries. We underline the imageries and we said this is what and what and what, right or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Tanimoto was a small man, quick to talk, laugh, and cry. He wore his black hair parted in the middle and rather long. The prominence of the frontal bone just above his eyebrows and the smallness of his mustache, mouth, and chin gave him a strange, old young look, boyish and yet wise, weak and yet friendly. He moved nervously and fast, but with restraint, which suggested that he was cautious, thoughtful man. He showed indeed just those thoughts the uneasy days before the bomb fell, beside having his wife spend the night in
Yes, stop at before the bomb fell. So we go back to the paragraph and please read it silently and I will ask you to tell me where are the senses used, what are the senses used in this passage.
Miss, what did you say?
Reread the passage alone because I will ask you what are the senses used in this passage. Yani, what can you see? What can you hear? What can you smell? What? Okay, Asma, are you here? Asma?
Yes, Miss.
Yes, Asma, huh?
Miss, page 241.
You didn't open the page, يا Asma? بلقيس. بلقيس. بيان. Busaina?
Yes, Miss.
Yes, Busaina. What is one of the senses you can use here?
The eyebrows and the smallness of his mustache, mouth, and chin give him to a strange.
Yes, so this is what? This is you can see or hear or smell.
See.
See. So underline it, please, and write see. Dalia? Dareen? Dalia, what is another sense here, Dalia? Dareen?
Yes, Miss. Miss, quick to talk, laugh, and cry.
Yes, this is what?
See.
Quick, talk.
Talk. 1 second.
Talk. How
Yes.
you notice the talk?
It's the voice or
Here.
ear.
Yes, here. So here he says to you, Mr. Tanimoto was a small man C, quick to talk, laugh, and cry. Here, he wore his black hair parted in the middle and rather long, the prominence of the frontal bones just above his eyebrows and the smallness of his mustache. C, mouth and chin gave him a strange old young look, boyish and yet wise, weak and yet fiery. He moved nervously and fast.
This is how we feel.
Movement. Hey Jude.
Kinesthetic.
Feel.
Kinesthetic. Yes, kinesthetic. Who said kinesthetic?
Nur Yusuf.
Noor Yusuf. Thank you, Noor. Do you remember kinesthetic, يا جود?
Yes, Miss, I got confused.
The movement there, yes. But with a restraint which suggests that he was a cautious, thoughtful man, he showed indeed just those qualities in the uneasy days before the bomb fell. Okay. Thank you, Noor. Jude, continue reading, Jude.
Yes, Miss. Did she stop at page 242?
Yes, at the beginning.
The uneasy days before the bomb fell, besides having his wife spend the nights in Ushida, Mr. Tanimoto had been carrying all the portable things from his church in the close-packed residential district called Nagagawa to a house that belonged to a rayon manufacturer in is it Ko? I don't know.
Yes, manufacturer in Korea.
Yeah, 2 miles from the center of town. The Ryan man, Mr. Matsu, had opened the unoccupied estate to a large number of his friends and acquaintances that they might evacuate whatever they wished to a safe distance from the probable target area.
Okay,
Mr.
so girls, what's happening here? People in Hiroshima heard that United States is planning something special for them. Why? Because Japan has bombed the Pearl Harbor, the American Pearl Harbor. So of course the United States will pay it back. So people were afraid on their properties, on their expensive possessions, and he was afraid on some books and papers that maybe they have maybe they are imported documents, and he wanted to put them in a safe place. Okay. So here he took the papers from a place to another, from a district called Nagagawa to a house that belonged to rayon manufacturer in Koi, to save them there in a safe place. Okay, thank you, Jude. Yes.
Miss, what does rayon manufacturer mean?
Rayon manufacturer. Rayon is fabric of cloth. Wait a minute, please. The computer. It is a fabric cloth. Okay. Where are we? Okay, Lana, you'll continue reading. Lana.
Yeah. Yes, Miss.
Yes, dear. Jude stopped. Where Jude stopped?
Line 48, Mr.
48. Yes, thank you, Habsi. Thank you, Jude.
At
Yalla,
area.
Lana.
Yeah. She stopped at target area, right?
Oh yeah, Mr. Tanimoto.
Mr. Tanimoto had no difficulty in moving chairs, hymnals, Bibles, altar gear, and church records by pushcart himself, but the organ console and an upright piano required some aid. A friend
Yes,
of his
because he moved this stuff, but there were some stuff that they could not be transferred easily because they require some aid, like the piano and the console. Continue.
Yes, the organ console and upright piano required some aid. A friend of his named Matoso had the day before helped him get the piano out to Koi. In return, he had promised this day to assist Mr. Matoso in
Matsu.
hauling out a daughter's belongings. That is why he had risen so early, before 6 o'clock that morning. Mr. Tanimoto started for Mr. Matsuo's house. There he found that their burden was to be a tanso, a large
Yes, their burden was to be a tanso. What is a tanso?
a large Japanese cabinet.
Yes, thank you. So, Mr. Tanimoto was afraid on his belongings, so he started to move them to another place. But there were some heavy stuff, so he couldn't move alone. So he asked help to his friend, Rima. Rima. Okay, Najwa.
Yes,
Continue, Najwa.
The two men set out. The morning was perfectly clear and so warm that the day promised to be comfortable. A few minutes after they started, the air raid siren went off, a minute-long blast that warned of approaching planes but indicated to the people of Hiroshima only a degree of danger, since it sounded every morning at this time. When an American weather plane came over, the two men pulled and pushed the handcart through the city street. Hiroshima was a fan-shaped city lying mostly on the six islands formed by the seven
Story
estuarial
revels.
rivers that branch out from the Ota rivers.
Thank you, Najwa. So, girls, read it with me. Yani, I will read it and read it with me because I will ask you to tell me where are the senses. Before 6 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Tanimoto started for Mr. Matsu's house. Okay? There he found that their burden was to be a tansu, a large Japanese cabinet. This is how they have to move. The morning was perfectly clear and so warm. Huh? Girls?
Visual.
Perfectly clear and so warm. It would be using which sense?
See?
See. Yes, see. And warm.
Feel?
Feel. Yes, who said feel first, Jude?
No, Ghada.
Ghada, thank you, ya Ghada. Feel, ya Ghada. Yes, it's warm, so it is feel. Thank you. And clear is see. Write it, please. Underline it and light it.
Miss,
Yes.
feel and what is it tactile? Um,
Where?
no, feel.
Yes,
What
tactile. Yeah.
tactile?
Yeah. Tactile, right? Tactile or tactile? Tactile. That the day promised to be uncomfortable. A few minutes after they started, the air raid siren went off. This is which sense, Dana Wael? Dana. Dana Suhail? Zena? Oh, no one is here today or what? Rama? Sarah?
Yes, miss, it's here.
Siren is what? Here. Excellent, Yasar. A minute-long blast that warned of approaching planes but indicates to the people of Hiroshima only a slight degree of danger because they are used to it. They are used to hear a siren when an American plane is near to the city because it happens. Okay? Since it sounded every morning at this time when an American weather plane came over, a plane to like discover the area, the two men pulled and pushed the handcraft through the city streets. And then he starts to tell you that Hiroshima looks like a fan-shaped city lying mostly on six islands. Okay, six islands in Japan. A Estuarial river that branch out from the Ota River. Estuarial River and Ota River. Okay.
Miss?
Maya, yes?
It's Rima. I was gonna answer when you called me, but my mic was lagging and Najwa started to read before I could answer.
Okay, يا ريما. read يا ريما.
Its main commercial and residential districts, covering about 4 square miles in the center of the city, contained 3/4 of its population, which had been reduced by several evacuation programs from a wartime peak of 380,000 to about 245,000 factories and other residential districts or suburbs lay compactly around the edges of the city. To the south,
south were the docks, an airport, and the island-studded inland sea. A rim of mountains run around the other three sides of the delta. Mr. Tanimoto and Matsuo took their way through the shopping center already full of people and across two of the rivers to the shopping slopping trees of koi and up them to the outskirts and foothills.
Yes, so here what is he writing us here? What does he write? What does he talk about here?
Describing Hiroshima.
Yes, describing Hiroshima, the citizens, the factories, the residential districts. So all of that were damaged. 4 square miles in the center of the city contained 3/4 of its population, which had been reduced by several evacuation programs from a wartime peak of 380,000 to about 245,000. Factories and other residential districts or suburbs, okay, all of that. The airport, the island-studded inland sea, all of that were damaged, okay? As we can see in the previous pictures that we only can, here is Hiroshima. Oh, wait, here you can see the mountains, okay? And here you can see that is through the sea here. See the rivers, the rivers here. Okay. Why they call it islands? Because they are surrounded by water from 4 sides. Okay. Thank you.
What is the mood of the story?
What?
What is the mood of the story until now?
We read and then we discuss. Okay. Thank you, Habti. Okay, then we go to Malak Wasim.
Yes, Miss.
Yes, Malak. Read, Malak. We stopped at 76, a rim of mountains.
A rim of mountains ran around the other a rim of mountains ran around the other 3 sides of the delta. Mr. Tanimoto or Mr. Matsu took their way through the shopping center, already full of people, and across 2 of the rivers to the shopping streets of Koi, and up them to the outskirts and foothills. As they started up a valley away from a tight-ranked houses, the all clear sounded. Pushing the handcart up to the Rion
the
man's
Japanese
house.
radar.
I read the ones in the parentheses?
Yes, dear, read them.
The Japanese radar operators detecting lands supposed that they comprised a reconnaissance.
Yes, reconnaissance. Wait.
Reconnaissance.
Here is
Pushing
it.
the
Here its meaning. Wait a minute, dear.
Okay.
Here is it. Yes, a military search for information. Reconnaissance. Reconnaissance. Okay. A military search for information. Comprise means to make up to. So comprised reconnaissance, it means to make or form a military search for information. Okay?
Okay. Pushing the handcart up to the Rayon's man's house was tiring, and the men, after they had maneuvered their load into the driveway and to the front steps, paused to rest a while. They stood with a wing of the house between them and the city. Like most homes in that part of Japan, the house consisted of a wooden frame and wooden walls supporting a heavy tile roof. Its front hall, packed with rolls of bedding and clothing, looked like a cool cave full of fat cushions opposite.
Yes, thank you. So here he says that Mr. Matsu, he started to move even his furniture to a safe place because he was afraid that he might lose all of these things into a normal bombing or a normal shooting, or he couldn't imagine what will happen. So here they just explained the Hiroshima and how Hiroshima is divided into the factories, the mountains, the lands, and this. And then he mentioned how they are moving the cabinet to his friend's house. Okay, opposite the house to Lujain, please continue.
Opposite the house to the right of the front door, there was a large Frankie rock garden. There was no sound of planes. The morning was still. That place was cool and pleasant.
Yes, so here what are the senses used in the morning was still, the place was cool and pleasant.
No sounds of plane is auditory.
It's still sound, yes. The place was cool and pleasant. I feel it cool. Feel, yes, I said it. I said it, I feel it cool. Okay, girls. Sarah just asked, what is the mood here? So what is the mood here? By describing these senses, see, hear, and feel. Still is here, auditory, and the place was cool and pleasant.
Is it chilled or
The feel and chill.
Yes, the mood of the paragraph or the mood
Here,
of the
no,
whole
here. When I said the morning was still, the place was cool and pleasant. Mood is what?
calm.
Calm. Yes, calm. Still. Tranquil.
Yes.
Okay? Okay, continue, Lujay.
Then a tremendous flash of light cut across the sky. Mr. Tanimoto has a distinct recollection that it traveled from east to west, from the city toward the hills. It seemed a sheet of sun. Both he and Mr. Matsuo reacted in terror, and both had time to react, for they were 3,500 yards or 2 miles from the center of the explosion. Mr. Matsuo dashed up the front steps in the house and dived among the bedrolls and buried himself there. Mr. Tanimoto took 4 or 5 steps and threw himself between 2 big rocks in the garden. He belied up very hard against one of them, as his face was against the stone. He did not see what happened. He felt a sudden pressure, and then splinters and pieces of boards and fragments of tile fell on him. He heard no roar. Almost no one in Hiroshima recalls hearing any noise of the bomb, but a fisherman in his sampan on the island sea near Tsuzu, the man with whom Mr. Tanimoto's mother-in-law and sister-in-law were living, saw the flash and
Thank
heard
you,
a
Lujay.
tremendous explosion.
Stop here. So, wait, let's see. What is that time? Oh, we still have time. Okay, then a tremendous flash of light cut across the sky. Which sense?
Sound.
See.
Visual.
Yes, see. Yes. Visual. Mr. Tanimoto had the distinct recollection that it traveled from east to west, from the city toward the hills. It seemed a sheet of sun. Both he and Mr. Matsu reacted in terror when they heard the flash of light. And both had time to react, okay? Because they were away. They were away of the center of the explosion. 2 miles. Mr. Matsu dashed up the front steps. He stepped front steps and to the house and dived among the bed rolls, because they say in the time of earthquake and then hide under a table, hide under a bed, because when the rocks fall off the ceiling, they fall on the bed or on the table. They hide under the table or under the bed. You understand, girls? Because when rocks fall off the ceiling, they do not hit your head and die, but the table will carry it for you or hold it for you or prevent it to be on your head. Okay? Yes. So, and the other man, Mr. Tanimoto, took 4 or 5 steps and threw himself between the 2 big rocks in the garden. also to be protected by these rocks. He bellied up very hard against one of them. Okay. As his face was against the stone, he did not see what happened because his face was against the stone. He felt a sudden pressure, and then splinters and pieces of board and fragments of tile fell on him. Pieces of board and fragments of tiles, you know, the tiles like that they are in the on the floor, these tiles like ceramic.
Yes.
Yes, on him, fell on him. He heard no roar. There was no sound. And they say that people who were there, they didn't hear a sound for the bomb when they exploded. No one in Hiroshima recalls hearing any noise of the bomb. But a fisherman in his sampan is a small boat, on the inland sea near to Suzu, the man with whom Mr. Tanimoto's mother-in-law and sister-in-law were living, saw the flash and heard a tremendous explosion. Okay? He saw and heard. So the senses here are what?
Auditory and visual.
Auditory and visual. Auditory here and visual is C. Okay? With me, girls, following?
Yes.
Yes.
درة.
Yes, miss.
درة read يا درة يلا.
Yes, miss.
Read درة read.
Okay.
He was nearly.
Oh, okay. He was nearly 20 miles from Hiroshima, but the thunder was greater than when the B-29s hit Iwakuni, only 5 miles away. When he dared, Mr. Tanimoto raised his head and saw that the Ryan man's house had collapsed. He thought a bomb had fallen directly on it. Such clouds of dust had risen that there was a sort of twilight around.
So what happened, girls? When he heard Mr. Tanimoto is the one who was there where?
Between the rocks.
Search and tell me where it was Matsu and Tanimoto.
Matsu, he went to the house.
Yes, Matsu went inside the house and hid under the bed. Tanimoto went in the garden and hid between two rocks. When he opened his eyes and looked, he found that the house. Yes, he had, and so that the rayon is the fabric, as I said to you, had collapsed in front of him. He thought a bomb had fallen on the house, because how a house will fall like this? A bomb fell on it. Okay, he didn't know that a bomb collapsed over the houses. Directly on it, maybe a bomb fell directly on it. Such clouds of dust had risen that there was a sort of twilight around. Okay. Thank you, Durra. Ghada?
Yes.
Not thinking?
What?
Continue reading, not thinking?
Yes.
Ghada, you're not following?
Yeah, following.
Yes.
Not thinking for the moment of Mr. Matsu under the ruins, he dashed out into the street. He noticed as he ran that the concrete wall of the estate had fallen over.
Yeah. Listen, girls, listen, because I want to finish this part with in the next period, because I want to take it, and they are just 10 lines to continue answering the questions. Okay. So Ghada, you will read when we come back. Okay. So what's happening here, girls, again? Before we continue, what happened? What happened here?
He's describing after the bomb. after the bomb.
The minute of the bomb. The two friends were there. One went inside the house, which was Mr. Matsu, and the other one was Mr. Tanimoto, between the two rocks. And then, when did they do that? After they saw a flashlight in the sky. When Mr. Tanimoto opened his eyes, he saw that the house had collapsed. So he said to himself, maybe a bomb fell on that house. Okay, so we'll go now for a break for 5 minutes. Wash your face, drink water, and then come after 5 minutes exactly. Okay, girls?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Bye, Miss.
Bye.
Bye, Miss.